The talk is on the drought, and when you talk about economic development, it is critical. And joining me to talk more about that is Dr. Robert Eyler, who's the CEO of the Marin Economic Forum. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, the drought, everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
What kind of efforts are underway in Marin County and actually in the region to deal with this problem?
You know, the funny thing is there hasn't been an enormous number of reactions, sort of emotional reactions first. We're hearing some rumblings out of the water districts that there's going to be either mandatory water rationing or increased in prices in terms of demand, which has got some people worried. But at this point, we haven't seen an enormous amount of what you could say is overt reactions in terms of everybody pulling up their lawns or a huge demand in landscape architecture or in design to try to redo your front lawn or your entire property simply to resist drought. But there's a lot of very good possibility that there's going to be some kind of mandatory rationing or much higher prices in terms of water demand later this year.
And higher prices at the supermarket you're talking about for our almonds, for our grapes, for our produce, basically?
Yeah, so when you take it to more of a regional and super regional level in the sense of thinking about the state overall, we should expect agricultural prices to rise. And we're not in a drought just this year. This is actually the third year we've had less than average rainfall. So it's going to start to transmit itself from agricultural goods through to the supermarkets and then ultimately to wage demands by workers who now are facing higher food prices because of the drought. That could take as much as 12 or 18 months to actually finally hit the markets, but that rumbling is also sitting behind at the state level. And so there's that piece of it too, for sure.
So how does this impact economic development as we go forward?
The first set of firms that are affected by this are going to be ones that are relatively water intensive. So like, let's say, just as an example, a beverage manufacturer, it's a relatively heavy water user, is going to have to change the way that they either do business, the amount that they produce, or just their entire cost structure because they may be facing a higher cost of intake in water. That's one way of looking at it. Agricultural, farms and other businesses that are dependent on agricultural goods up the supply chain will also be affected sort of immediately in the sense that you should expect that restaurants may increase prices simply because they'll be looking at increased prices, and that can transmit itself through to tourism, hotel stays, and a lot of other pieces that depend on restaurants as sort of a complementary product to what they're doing.
Right. Actually, somebody told me that one district said that to some farmers that we're not going to give you any more water.
Yeah, it's possible. So the other side of it and sort of the extreme side is that there may be not enough water to go around, period. So regardless of rationing, regardless of pricing, the supply just may not be there. Southern California, I think the conundrum is much more difficult to solve because their water demand is very much dependent on being satiated by what flows from the north. And so we'll probably hear a lot of rumblings out of Sacramento about how to deal with sort of a statewide drought issue. And of course, the weather in both Southern California and Northern California the last few days, it's like the stock market. When the stock market goes down and then suddenly goes back up and washes away the loss, people seem to forget that problem's still there. It's the same thing, is that right now people are saying, okay, maybe we're going to be okay, but we shouldn't bet on it.
Do you think in Marin we're doing a pretty good job of conserving?
I think Marin has a culture of conservation. In the 1970s when the drought came, the sort of last big severe drought, that culture still remains in terms of being relatively water conscious, efficient, and thinking about the environment first in a lot of decisions. So I think Marin County is kind of unique in that sense, that as a smaller community and a smaller county, they seem to be rallied around water a little bit more. But Marin County, in a funny way, is dependent upon what comes out of Sonoma County very much in terms of water flow. So it's regional even for a place like Marin County.
Great. So we're going to keep a close watch on this water issue, and people still need to conserve even when we see the rain.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet, thanks.
Dr. Robert Eyler, CEO of the Marin Economic Forum. This is Comcast Newsmakers. I'm Terry Hardesty. Thanks for watching.